The day my town disappeared. Last year, my hometown disappeared. Not metaphorically, not the way small towns slowly fade when businesses close and people move away. I mean it literally. Disappeared. You can't find it on a map anymore. There are no records of it. And when I tell people where I grew up, they usually assume I remembered the name wrong. But the strangest part isn't that the town vanished. The strangest part is that I still remember it, and almost nobody else does. It started with something small, so small that when it happened, I almost ignored it. Looking back now, that was my first mistake, because that was the moment the town erased something for the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. My town sat between two hills and a slow river that barely moved anymore. It was the kind of place where nothing really changed. One grocery store, one gas station, one high school, and an old train station that hadn't seen a passenger train in 15 years. Most people who grew up there stayed there, not because they had to, but because eventually they stopped trying to leave. Life was predictable, quiet, almost frozen in time, until people started leaving. At first, it was just one family, the Millers. Their house went dark one night. 3 days later, there was a for sale sign in the yard. No moving truck, no goodbye party, just gone. Then another family left, then another. Within 2 months, 8 houses on my street were empty. At the time, I thought the town was shrinking, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was much stranger, because a few weeks later, something disappeared. Frank Miller's barber shop had been on Main Street my entire life. You could smell the shaving cream before you even opened the door. Inside, there was a red leather chair that squeaked every time someone leaned back. Frank kept a jar of candy on the counter for kids. Every person in town had gotten a haircut there at least once. Then one morning, I walked down Main Street, and the barber shop was gone. Not closed, not boarded up. Gone. The buildings on either side of it were suddenly touching, like the barber shop had never existed. At first, I thought the town must have demolished it overnight, but something about that didn't make sense. There were no broken bricks, no empty lot, no construction equipment, just sidewalk, like someone erased a word from a sentence. And somehow, the sentence still made sense. So I did something that later on I would realize changed everything. I asked someone about it. I walked into the hardware store next door. Mr. Dalton stood behind the counter the same way he had every morning for the last 30 years. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said. "Where's Frank's barber shop?" I asked. Mr. Dalton frowned. "What barber shop?" I laughed. "The one next door." He leaned out the window and looked at the building beside us. Then he turned back toward me. "There's never been a barber shop there." Something cold moved through my chest. "Yes, there has," I said. "Frank Miller, red chair, candy jar." Mr. Dalton stared at me like I had said something strange. "Kid, you feeling all right?" That was the moment I realized something worse than a building disappearing. The barber shop hadn't just vanished. Everyone had forgotten it ever existed, except me. And once I noticed that, I started seeing other things that didn't make sense. But the person who understood it first was my father.
That night, my father was sitting on the porch, like he always did, coffee in his hand, watching the empty road that ran past our house. When I told him about the barber shop, he didn't look surprised. He just nodded slowly. "You finally noticed," he said. "Noticed what?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he said something I didn't understand at the time. "This town isn't permanent." I thought he meant businesses closing, people moving away, but that wasn't what he meant. "When I was your age," he said, "there was another neighborhood across the river. Houses, a church, a school." I looked toward the hills beyond town. There was nothing there but trees. "What happened to it?" I asked. My father took a slow sip of coffee. "It disappeared." I thought he was joking, but then he said something that made my stomach tighten. "And most people don't remember it ever existed."
At the edge of town sits an old train station. The place closed years ago. Broken windows, rusty tracks, weeds growing through the platform. But one evening, while walking past it, I noticed something strange. There was a light inside. When I pushed open the door, a man stood beside the empty tracks. He looked tired, like someone who had been waiting for a very long time. "Did the train already leave?" he asked. "There hasn't been a train here in years," I said. The man slowly unfolded a map and spread it across the counter. Then he pointed to where our town should be. Except on the map, there was nothing there, just forest. He looked back at me. "This place disappears," he said, slowly, piece by piece. Then he added something worse. "And when something disappears here, people forget it ever existed." The next morning, I walked into town, and the movie theater was gone. An entire building vanished. No rubble, no empty lot, just sky where it used to be. And nobody noticed. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. People weren't leaving my small town. They were escaping before the town itself disappeared.